I'm Ray Ray and I'm ready to rumble. It's a new year and we did it. We won the war. However, the battle has just begun and we are now currently witnessing the leftist radicals, how they are trying to gear up to obstruct President Trump's executive orders to end birthright citizenship. And so, MAGA, we never sleep, and we will support our president to the death of us. Okay. And we will protect and defend him against radical leftist nuts like AG Rob La Bonita out in California. And he basically stated that babies are going to be deported, innocent children would be reduced to leaving the country. And, just all of these fears that they're trying to stoke amongst the migrants and the sympathy they want to spark amongst American people using guilt. Now, he said that all of these people were going to be affected, but if you heard Trump, he didn't do any retro. We didn't hear any retro. Now, MAGA, we wanted retro. Personally, I would have said 96. I would have rolled it back to 1996. But, Trump isn't going to do that. Trump is a great, wonderful person. He wants everybody to be happy, wonderful president. He's going to do what's right for us. But what I wanted to do in this video was just take the short time out to give us a little history on why the 14th Amendment was even needed and how it is preposterous and disrespectful for the illegal alien community and their representatives and their organizations to continue to use the American Negro, which I am, and others like me, use our birthright to further the cause of fueling cheap labor for the Democrats and their buddies. Okay, and a couple of rhinos too, and their pals. Because what's happening is the corporations are getting richer and richer, and all Americans are getting poorer and poorer. I did some research on salaries, and basically they were saying that the salaries for Americans is kind of capped at 50,000. So we are not really moving. Now you have some, other people who are in other, various forms of like entertainment and maybe some CEOs or whatever who may be uh, monetizing, or capitalizing off of their, careers and their degrees or whatever. But a lot of us hold degrees and it doesn't even matter. It's just a piece of paper. That's why I love Kanye so much. He did a song about that, a little skit, and it was like, yeah, my father has all this education and no money. And this is by design. Because if you can continue to bring in cheap labor, they'll train them. They're literally giving them the deal that our grandparents got, that the baby boomers got, where they didn't have to attend college. They could graduate from high school and they were walked on to several different, city jobs, earned great livings or whatever, and they weren't college educated, all of them. Okay, and so this is the deal that the illegal migrants are getting. And here in New York, they don't care who, because they did what they did under the pandemic, where they fired a lot of law enforcement, a lot of healthcare workers. They left. They left, and now they're just scrambling looking for city workers. So, some of you New Yorkers, if you may have opportunity, I would apply for some of these city jobs. Maybe if you want to come back to New York. I know it's a mess now, but I believe in New York. I was going to leave myself, but why should I leave such a beautiful city? I was here, I'm in my late 40s. So I was here when New York wasn't looking, as good. And to see how far it's come and to know that there's even better to come, I don't want to give that up. I don't feel like I should have to run because different people are coming, but I should have the right to have my space and not feel crowded and harassed by these people, which oftentimes we Negro Americans find ourselves in different circumstances like that. When these people get their numbers up, they start to feel like they are territorial and that they can dictate things to black people because of, our history. Okay, so I'm glad to see Trump cleaning things up because we definitely don't want the criminal element. We want all of the criminal element gone. And some of these other people who have broke the law should be punished as well. And you can come back in legally. But what I aim to do is to show a little bit of the history to help you understand why why that clause, why we even needed birthright citizenship, right? Because Europeans didn't need it. The British didn't need birthright citizenship. They were free to go and live their lives how they chose. They didn't need permission to be anywhere. We had to have walking papers. If you got off the plantation, you had to have walking papers with you. White people didn't have that. You had to be escorted if you needed to leave or whatever, and you had to sit in the back and hide and just different things and elements of our history that none of these people coming today have those issues. So to constantly use the Negro American history, it's a disgrace. And it's a hypocrisy by all of the people who are doing it. And that's both the congressmen, senators, the religious leaders, as well as the illegal migrants to use someone else's, pain and struggle to further your cause. That's a disgrace. And that's why we got Trump, because God is good. So this is from the Southern Poverty, is it History or Learning Center? Want to mess them up. A lot of my people don't like them. They claim, they call them racist or whatever. But, I like good information and reputable sources or whatever. So I think it's the Southern Poverty. Here we go, right here. Southern Poverty Law Center. So that's where this information, comes from. Take it with a grain of salt if you really don't care for the organization. But see, look at these guys. Now, when these illegals are coming across the border, you're not met with these kind of people here. This is the Ku Klux Klan. You're not running into people like that. Imagine if people were coming across the border and if there were a bunch of guys like this out there, we probably wouldn't have a border issue. But this is not what they're met with. I've even seen some of the ICE agents act as nannies, especially in the crux of when all of these caravans were coming. They were changing diapers, burping people. Do you think, giving people Tylenol, do you think they would have aided a Negro, indigenous person because, they cared about them? Or they would have inflicted more pain on them? Okay, because this is who Negroes were running from. This is in one of the costumes from the beginning. And this is not to bash white people, because I'm good with white people who are good with me. The ones that don't, they know where they can go. Like, it is what it is. But this is just to show the history is why we needed it. Okay, look at this. Come back and read this. It's a long read, so that's why I didn't bother. The night patrols, making sure the slaves, were on them plantations, or, people who were freed weren't roaming around just enjoying life. Do you know there was certain you couldn't even make noise after a certain time at night if white people were nearby. You couldn't even make a sound, because if you made a sound, that was cause for lynching. And they would pull you out of your home and they would burn up your home and lynch you. Okay. Here's a lynching right here. The lynching right here. Underneath the picture says lynchings were common, a common form of vigilante justice during the 19th century. So you see all these people and everybody's taking pictures. They're networking with each other, and there's a guy hanging up there. Now, today most people would be appalled and they would be in tears, or they would, confused about what's going on. But you see how they were. Look at their demeanor. They were just out there dressed in their best. This is everyday life. And they lynch their own too. White people definitely lynch their own. Like, come on now. That's why I don't really, when people try to go in on Negroes, I don't really take it personally, because they lynch their own. Here we go right here. Prime example. This is Klansmen were caught trying to lynch a carpetbagger. A carpetbagger is just like an opportunist, and he's white, see? But he wasn't from their area. If you came into their area from like the northern states into the southern states, and you tried to seek opportunities for yourself, and you really didn't have any alliance to them and their society, this could happen to you. So you see, they would do this to white people too. Anybody going up against them could get it. They didn't care that you were white. Okay, so these are the type of things that were going on. And imagine that. Here's a white guy. He sees opportunity. He wants to open a business. Hey, why can't I come from the North? Just because I'm not a Klansman, I can't come down to the South and start up a business. There are people down here who, I suspect will buy things from me. But oh no, if your values didn't align with theirs, they would take you out. Okay, and here's some of the images and stuff. I mean, just a visual. Look at this. It's supposed to be like an angel or something, or like a warrior with the American flag, and look what he's doing. Standing on a Negro. So this was these are the type of images we had to deal with. You could not say anything. If, today, if somebody says something, you could defend yourself as a Negro American and stand up for your people. But back then, if you said anything, that was a lynching. Okay. Back in the civil rights movement, a lot of people were, had their house firebombed. Medgar Evers was taken out, I believe. Let me not even go there, but I believe it was the same people who was supposed to be on his side that took him out. But look, now they started out on horses. Imagine them, on four wheels here. Imagine the amount of damage and fear that they inflicted upon Negroes in the South. And look at this. And again, I mean, check out the demeanor, and this is the past. I'm not telling anybody to hate white people, because white people, they get a lot of hate, you know. And unfortunately, the good ones are the ones that always seem to suffer the most. The ones that may try to help us are the ones that, get suffered. They suffer the anguish, and, they just probably walk away feeling frustrated or whatever. But this is the reason why we feel a certain way, is because of, our history, things like this. Look at this man's, battered body. And again, the demeanor. Look, everybody stone faced. You don't see not one person who looks like maybe we did wrong here. It's almost like he's a prize, a piece of meat. Excuse me. Like they went deer hunting or something. So when people take our struggle, I definitely uh, feel a way about it. I don't like it. But it explains why we need it, because, even after the Civil War, after everything we did in the Civil War, the Red Tails, oh no, I'm sorry, that's World War II. I'm mixing up wars here. But, yeah, the Red Tails and everything that we've contributed on that battlefield still didn't mean anything. My grandfather fought in World War II. And my mother's family, my grandfather on my mother's side, from Birmingham, Alabama, down there with Bull Connor and them were. My grandmother, could talk about Bull Connor. She could definitely tell you about Bull Connor if she wanted to. But, he was in the military and he served, and they came back very proud or whatever. They were getting spat on and N-word this and N-word that, and you ain't special N-word. And so my grandfather came up north. He left Birmingham and came up here to New York, to try to have some peace and, live the best life he could with his family or whatever, which is crazy. But yeah, that's what happened. It's my big daddy. I love my big daddy. But yep, and this was the women's auxiliaries of the Ku Klux Klan. They formed their own marching corporation and joined in mass Klan demonstrations. So the women wanted to be a part. They wanted to support their men and support their Southern beliefs. So they joined up. Okay. But it just goes to show you everybody was in on it. And this is just a mess. But when people come across that border, they're not experienced. This is not their experience, is what I'm trying to point out. Nobody is burning them out. Nobody is firebombing them. As a matter of fact, there were a group of Mexicans connected to a cartel who firebombed Negroes for living in their area. And then they turn around and say somebody is being racist towards them, and using prejudices towards them. But yet, when they get over here in California, there has been several racial attacks against the Negroes in LA. So the very people who claim they're running, they don't want any violence to meet them or their families, or whatever are the very people who are inflicting this kind of racial violence into the Negro communities, and not just Mexicans, Africans. A lot of people, a lot of different groups who have come over here have victimized Negroes and look down and do their best to try to dehumanize Negroes. Some of them are in managerial positions and they will not hire you. Okay, it doesn't matter how um, educated you are, how experienced you are, they will make sure that your resume hits the digital garbage can. Okay, so they are discriminating against Negroes and using our struggle to help them stay here as undocumented and illegal aliens. Ridiculous. There were some young kids, these kids like 17, 18. This is a freedom bus. It's when they were trying to register, the black people in the South, Negroes of the South, to vote for Johnson, which was terrible. But anyway, so I just wanted to show that. And, as to why we needed it. This is very good. It talked about the fire bombings in the church and on and on and on. They mention minorities, they mention Jewish people, but if you really go through this, a lot of the incidents here will be against Negroes. Okay, so I just wanted to do that first. And now I want to take you to the timeline where, let me see if I could just switch over here. I don't know if this thing allows me to do that. Okay, I hope so. But yeah, let me take you to this timeline because what I want to show is a time where we were way more strict as it came, as it relates to immigration, right? Okay, here we go. We have the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798. Congress enacted deportation laws targeting persons deemed political threats to United States in response to conflicts in Europe. Okay. Uh, the Indian Removal Act. See, during the presidency of Andrew Jackson, this law authorized the confiscation of land from Native Americans and provided resources for their forced removal west of the Mississippi River. So we know when that happened. We know what that was about. Okay. And this is 1848 Treaty of Guadalupe, Hidalgo, and the settlement of the Mexican-American War. This treaty formalized the United States annexation of a major portion of northern Mexico, El Norte, and conferred, I'm sorry, conferred citizenship on Mexicans choosing to remain in the territory. So they have restrictions placed on them, right? Let's see. Testimony of Chinese male witness. This is just to show you how they didn't. This is 1854 People versus Hall. This is California Supreme Court case ruled that the testimony of a Chinese man who witnessed a murder by a white man was inadmissible, denying Chinese alongside Native and Negro American Negroes the status to testify in courts against whites. Okay. Because they weren't calling us African Americans. All this political correctness gets on my nerve. They weren't calling us that. They were calling us Negroes. So they should get that right. Dred Scott, we know that one is very, very prominent case today. Okay. Saying that he wasn't entitled to his privileges as a citizen. And here's another one here. Act to Prohibit the Coolie Trade, 1862. During the Civil War, the Republican-controlled Congress sought to prevent Southern plantation owners from replacing their enslaved African American workers with unfree contract or coolie laborers from China. Okay, the coolies. I think, some of us probably have heard that before. But yeah, here's where the Republicans actually stepped in and, did some job protection They're for the Negroes. So, we hate the Republican Party, and they are the racist party, which is ridiculous. Okay. There was one I really wanted to get to. Let me check my book here. The Palmer raids. I wanted to get to that. Okay, the Page Law, that was very good too. 1875, this law prohibited the recruitment to the United States of unfree laborers and women for immoral purposes. What we talking about today, all this sex trafficking and prostitutes all over the place. Well, we used to have a law for that, Page Law. And now I'm just showing you some of these laws to show you how strict we were. So a lot of us who have studied these laws and people who are, well, obviously people aren't alive today from these times, but everybody who studied these laws, lawyers, attorneys, people who are just interested in the law, paralegals, whoever, you know, we see the difference between the toughness, how tough it was for you to come into this country. And you just read a lot of these laws, you know doggone well that the people that our forefathers did not intend for people to just come here, have a baby, and be a citizen. They wouldn't have gone through all of this. And I'm going to show you, it began to break down in the 1940s. Okay. But I just wanted to go through some. Look at here. We had a Chinese Exclusion Act. Name that Chinese Exclusion Act, an act to execute certain treaty stipulations related to Chinese. Okay, and at first such group identified race and class for several limited. Okay, so this is they were basically like making sure they came in on merit, like Trump says, based on merit. Like they didn't want the ignorant, illiterate, and degenerate ones. Like I'm sorry to say it, but I'm just gonna say it like we got today. Because you have people here who can't read in their own language. And I don't mean just with these caravan, I mean over the years. You have people here who are illiterate, who cannot read in their own language, much less English. And that is a disadvantage because when you have people like that, they will be willing to do anything to get paid. They'll do anything to survive because they don't have any skills. And in some cases, some of these people are on jobs. I've witnessed some of them being on jobs. I took my client to a clinic appointment, and she had to fill out some basic paperwork just so that they could exchange information. It's called electronic health record, right? And so just so they could conversate with each other about the care of my client. And so this woman who's been working there fills out this paper all wrong. And, my client was so upset and she was like, I don't understand it. I don't. So I took the paper and I looked at it, and there were spaces where they were asking for very specific information like address, MPI numbers, just very basic information. This woman wrote a sentence in that space for that, and was like, yes, could you please share the information with us? Like she couldn't even read. Oh my God, I just went on for nothing. But yeah, that's what we have today. They are basically putting people who lack the skills, the education, and the talent on a lot of jobs in New York. I can't speak for every state. Maybe certain states where agriculture is, your most important product, they're going more towards that trade. But in New York, we don't have agriculture here. So what jobs do you think they're putting them on? We have a demand for healthcare. This is a city. It's a big city. So services. So guess who's doing all those jobs? And it doesn't matter if they can't communicate with you. So it's terrible what has happened in New York. It's terrible what has happened in New York. New York was a money making city. I don't know what happened. Even after September 11th couldn't even like bring us down. We were still a money making city. There was still opportunity in life. When you stepped onto the concretes of New York, you felt that spark. And you don't today. You really don't. There's nothing inspiring here. It's terrible. And it's full of illegal aliens. 750,000. Before the migrant crisis, we're probably now at about 1 million. So New York isn't that big. Okay? So contrary to belief, New York ain't that big. If you have a homeless problem, then New York can't be that big because clearly you don't have the homes. But that's enough about New York because everybody's tired of us anyway. But I wanted to get to the Palmer raids. Let me just do it for my book because I jotted it down. But you can come here to this timeline just so you can see. Let me get you down to 1942, and then let me just um, okay, that case too. I wanted to go over. But the Palmer raids. This is from 1919 to 1920 to conduct a series of raids to round up and arrest suspected anarchists and left wing radicals. So that's just, we need to put that back on the books. That's just for the Democrats. I say we need to bring the Palmer raids back because we definitely have some anarchists out here burning things up. So the Palmer raids, pass it around. We want that back. But Immigration Act, okay, United States, Juan Kim Ark. This case is very important. Very important in this case right here because this is what they try to predicate their argument on. This case right here. Now I'm not really familiar because I didn't really care honestly, guys, because I know it's the Supreme Court justices made a mistake, and that's just my personal opinion. Okay, um, I'm not sure about this guy's parents if they were here um, illegally or not. I think they had some sort of permission to be over here working, right? And so evidently, he was born here, and then after he was born, they left and went back to China, and then he tried to enter America when he turned 18 to come over here to start business, a life for himself, whatever. And they held him up. And what they were saying is that he wasn't, a legal citizen, yada yada. And basically, they ended up giving him citizenship under our birthright, saying that all persons born, had the right to citizenship, which is ridiculous. And I will tell you why. The reason that is ridiculous is because today, right? Maybe he got away with it. Maybe a few others got away with it. Back then, number one, we weren't facing an invasion. We weren't facing homelessness, poverty, and well, there was some poverty, but it wasn't, like it is today. Today we are over. Most cities is where these legal undocumented people go to are overpopulated. We are busting at the seams. So number one, it's a whole different time today, and we have terrorist attacks. We have people who are who've been released from insane asylums. There's a whole different uh, bunch of contributing circumstances that would allow us to get these people out of here today. But back then it was different. But however, the reason, like I just showed you, the history of the racism and brutality against the Negro on American soil is why we even needed it. Because after the Civil War, we were supposed to be free, and that was that. But they did not honor those freedoms. So if they caught a Negro out past sundown, or whatever the situation may be, they just didn't respect the fact that you were freedom. So they had to go back 1, 2, and 3 times to legislate, to try to get the legislation clear enough so people could understand that you have to leave these people alone. Whether you like them, whether you feel like they're entitled to have a house like you have, or have, a job and have a family and just be happy and just be at peace. Whether you felt like they was right or not, they're entitled to it. And they had to keep going back doing that. And that is not the situation for these illegal aliens that come up in here today. And I am sick and tired of them using this one case as a pillar to open up the floodgates for every illegal alien to use the birthright of a bunch of people who were lynched, burned, persecuted, and used for their free labor, separated from their families. This is where they get this crap from, excuse me. Separated from their families, some of them to never, ever find their families again. And let me tell you something. It wasn't by chance. It wasn't by their own accord. This was due to slavery. So there's no way in hell you're going to tell me that illegal aliens are compatible. The 14th Amendment is for the Negro, you silly peasants.